The wheels of her suitcase hummed softly against the hardwood, a gentle insect chorus under the brighter metronome of her heels, click, click, click. Like a woman returning from a victory lap, she hoped someone had been waiting to applaud. She was glowing, summer-bloomed and lacquered with airport fatigue that looked good on her, the kind of tired that meant important things were done in important rooms. And for a second the sight of her felt like the memory of sunlight through old glass, warped, pretty, not quite true. "Hi, honey," she sang, voice syrup-sweet, tossing her coat onto the hallway bench and letting her bag tilt against the wall, her smile wider than it had any right to be. "I missed you." The envelope on the coffee table was a color the world saves for forms and decisions, off-white, almost bleached, edges razor crisp from the printer's bite. I set my mug down, the ceramic thudding a muted period at the end of a sentence neither of us had yet spoken. "Welcome home," I said, and my voice sounded like a stranger wearing my face. Calm, too calm, the kind of calm that happens right before storms chew up neighborhoods and leave trampolines in trees. She leaned in to kiss my cheek, and I turned just enough that her lips grazed air, a kiss placed on absence. A flicker crossed her face, confusion, then something else as expertly erased as a thumb smudge on glass. Clara was good at removing what didn't serve the image. That was how she'd fooled me so long. "How was the trip?" I asked, as if the room wasn't already tilting toward a cliff. "Busy but rewarding," she replied, the sparkle in her eyes glossy enough to skate on. "The client loved our presentation." "That's wonderful," I said, and watched the moment the world caught up to her gaze. Her hand, fishing in her purse for lipstick and phone, paused at the envelope. She didn't touch it. The air did. "What's that?" "Something you should read," I said, and gestured like a dealer offering a final card. She picked it up, her fingers hovering for just a second longer than a person with nothing to hide would allow. She unfolded the pages, and I watched color drain out of her face like someone pulled the plug. The first line devoured the second, and the second the third, and by the fourth I could hear her breath go thin. "What is this?" she whispered, but she knew. People always know the shape of the knife before they feel the cut. "A transcript of your text messages," I said, "with Greg." Her head snapped up, eyes wide, panic flaring like paper catching fire. I don't know what you mean." "Don't insult my intelligence, Clara," I said, and for the first time in months my voice found bone. "I know about the hotel, the weekend trip. The business dinners that weren't business." I watched the tremor in her hands climb to her shoulders and settle into her mouth. "How did you?" she stammered. "It doesn't matter how," I said. "What matters is that it's over." "Over?" Her voice cracked on the word, a violin string snapped mid-note. "This marriage," I said, standing. The room made me a taller man than I remembered being, all of it. "You've been lying for months, maybe longer. I have been patient, I have been kind, and this is how you repay me." Tears came in earnest, mascara breaking from perfect symmetry and streaking down to prove she was human. Once that would have undone me, not anymore. "James, please," she begged, reaching for the air where my name used to live. "Let's talk about this, I can explain." "What could you possibly explain?" I asked, a bitter laugh catching like a fish bone. "That you felt neglected, needed attention, fine, you chose betrayal." I walked to the kitchen and poured whiskey, the good kind that usually means warmth and quiet conversations after long days. It burned like disinfectant. When I returned, she hadn't moved, anchored by guilt. "You don't have to do this," she said. "Oh, but I do." I set the glass down and lifted the second envelope. "You see, Clara, I've been busy while you've been occupied." Divorce papers sound heavier than they are. Paper shouldn't thud, but it did. "No," she whispered. "No, you can't mean this." "I've never meant anything more," I said. "The house will be sold and the proceeds split. Your car is yours, my name's off the title. Your things will be sent to your sister's place. There's a moving truck waiting. Pack what you need tonight, the rest goes tomorrow." She reached for me and I stepped back. "Anything," she said. "I'll do anything." "The time for anything was before you tore us apart," I said. "You can't manipulate me anymore." She collapsed onto the couch as if the room had stolen her bones. Grief scraped at me, a dull spoon against the inside of my ribs, but behind it was something cleaner. Relief, maybe, breath, space. "Don't contact me again," I said. "This is goodbye." Outside, the air was crisp with the promise of rain. The car engine hummed like a lullaby written for a different night and a different man. I drove until the streetlights turned into a ribbon of gold, and the ocean unrolled in front of me like a language I used to speak. On the sand, the day died slow, the sun bleeding gold and crimson into a horizon that didn't care who I was. Waves touched my shoes like they were asking permission. I gave it. I let the memories go with the water, every lie sanded down into something smooth enough to skip. The glow she walked in with was gone now, and in its place was quieter light. Mine, not bright, true cliffhanger. Back at the house under the glass dome where our wedding cake topper used to sit, I had left one last thing beside the divorce papers, 3 silver keys and a folded photograph Clara had never seen, a picture that had turned my blood cold the first time I held it. She hadn't unfolded that one yet, but she would, and then the real story would begin. The house looked different at night when the street met the windows and pressed its palms against the glass. I stood at the curb and watched the moving truck's hazard lights blink like a slow heartbeat. Men in blue shirts lifted our life in labeled squares: kitchen, office, bedroom, carrying it down the path we planted hydrangeas along the summer we promised ourselves we were building something permanent. Inside, Clara moved through rooms like a ghost that hadn't learned yet it was dead. The photograph I'd left was taken on a Tuesday when the light was flat and unforgiving, and phones captured the truth by accident. It had been slid into an anonymous envelope at my office door 5 weeks ago. No return address, no note, just the image. Clara outside the Marlowe Hotel, her hand on a man's chest, their mouths inches from a kiss that had probably already happened 3 floors up. The first time I saw it, I couldn't make my hands open. Panic makes a fist of a man. The second time I made calls. The third I asked questions I didn't want answers to and got them anyway. Down the hall, a drawer slammed. "Why are there only 3 keys?" she called, voice strained, that brittle politeness people wear when the world is ending and they don't want to get caught screaming. "One for the house, one for your car, one for the storage unit," I said from the doorway. "The fourth was for us, it doesn't fit anymore." She looked up, eyes swollen. "You're cruel." "No," I said, "I'm precise." She held up the photograph, finally unfolded. "Who sent this?" "I don't know," I said, because that was true in the way that matters. I knew it had been slid under my door, but I didn't know whose fingers had let go. "But it doesn't change what you did." "Greg was a mistake," she whispered. "I was lonely, I felt invisible. You were gone even when you were here. I reached for the wrong hand." "I was gone," I laughed, not because it was funny, but because laughter was the only sound big enough to fill the space between us. "Clara, I was standing in the same rooms as you, asking the same questions, waiting for the same answers. And you built a second life inside the first like a Russian doll with poison in the paint." She sank onto the edge of the rug we bought on our honeymoon, tracing the pattern with her finger as if touching the past could resurrect it. "Do you remember Santorini?" she asked. "The white roofs and the blue domes, and how we promised to tell each other the truth even when it hurt." "I do," I said. "I'm honoring that promise now." She closed her eyes. "Greg doesn't matter." "Greg mattered enough for you to book a suite and call it a conference," I said. "He mattered enough that you turned off your location sharing and labeled him Grace in your phone." Her mouth tightened. "You went through my phone." "I went through the wreckage you left me in," I said. "I hired a private investigator after the photograph. The transcript on the table, that's not from your phone." "That's from his." Her eyes flickered. "The smallest thing, a bird's shadow passing over a field. He gave you that." "He didn't have to," I said. "People who hide leave crumbs." "I just followed them." Silence held for a long time, light ticking on the wall clock, a metronome in a song no one wanted to play. Outside, the moving gaze laughed at a joke, and the sound came into our house like an intruder. Clara rubbed her temples. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing," I said. "I want you to pack." We moved through rooms as if we were visiting a museum version of our life, pointing at artifacts. The chipped mug from the flea market where we argued over whether it was art or trash. The photo strip where her hair was still long enough to get tangled in my button. The plant we brought back from her mother's funeral and managed not to kill. Each object had a story, and every story took something from me on its way out the door. In the bedroom, the framed vows leaned against the dresser. She picked them up and read aloud, voice wobbling but clear. "I promise to choose you even when it's hard." She stopped. "I broke this." "You did," I said, "and I broke the part of me that believed I'd be enough to stop you." "I don't want your forgiveness," she said, surprising me. "I don't deserve it. I want to tell you something you don't know." My body tensed, a rope pulled taut. "What?" "It started as punishment," she said. "The first time." The words were quiet, but they detonated anyway. "You missed my presentation. I told you it was important and you said you couldn't get away, that your deadline was everything, and I thought if I don't matter, I'll make it hurt. And then it was easy to keep hurting. Easier than admitting I was lonely. Easier than asking you to stay." A sound came out of me that didn't belong to language. "You set the house on fire because I forgot to watch you light a candle," I said. "I know," she sobbed. "I know." The men knocked on the bedroom door. "Ma'am, we're ready for the boxes." Clara wiped her face and nodded, then turned to me. "There's something else in that envelope," she said, "behind the photograph." I slid the picture free, a receipt. "The Marlowe Hotel, room 1207, 2 guests, 1 king bed, audaciously honest ink, dated 3 months after our 9th anniversary. The signature at the bottom wasn't hers, it was mine." My stomach lurched. "What is this?" She stared at me as if I'd just confessed to a murder I didn't remember committing. "You tell me." Cliffhanger. The receipt trembled in my hand, not because of the paper, because of the memory that wasn't a memory yet, something half there at the edge of a dark room. Room 1207, the night the storm took the power out. The night a bar napkin had my name spelled wrong. It shouldn't be possible, but the ink said it was. There are days you remember because they were perfect, and there are days you remember because if you don't, you'll lose yourself. Room 1207 dug its nails into the back of my mind and pulled. I sat on the edge of the bed, the receipt on my knees, trying to breathe slow enough to make sense. Memory is a liar, yes, but paper is a tyrant. The signature was mine, the tilt of the J, the impatient cross on the T that never lands where it should. I didn't, I said, the word tasting like copper. I didn't. Clara didn't gloat. She didn't sneer, didn't seize the opening like a lawyer smelling blood. She just looked tired. You were there, she said softly. Maybe not with someone, maybe not for what I did, but you were there. I pulled my phone and scrolled back. Calendar dots like freckles. 3 months after our anniversary, storm, power outage, my mother's fall, the emergency room, the I-95 closure, the text to my boss, I'll be late. The Lyft driver's name, Hallam. The bar napkin with my name spelled as James. The Marlowe's lobby is the only place that had power that night. I had gone in to charge my phone, to call the hospital, to book a room for my brother who was driving down from Boston. I signed the receipt for the temporary stay when the front desk said the lobby charge ports were for guests only. 2 guests. My brother, I said, the realization snapping like a bone back into place. He arrived after midnight. I signed for the room before he got there. Clara exhaled, not relief exactly, something like it's worse than that. Then why was your credit card charged for room 1207 2 months later? She asked, sliding a second page out that I hadn't noticed. Same hotel, same room number, different date. The room went smaller, I don't know. You do, she said. You always know the details. You keep the details like other people keep photographs. Details? 2 months later, what was I doing? The photograph of Clara outside the hotel was dated 5 weeks ago. The receipt she held was dated 7 weeks ago. Someone had been in room 1207 under my name before her picture was taken. And then 5 weeks ago she had been there with Greg. My name had walked ahead of her, paved the way. Who sent you this? I asked. I told you I don't know, she hesitated. But someone wants this to look like a pattern. Or someone wants this to look like mine, I said. Downstairs the movers shouted to each other and a box clapped shut like a book ending itself. I stood and paced, the fibers of the rug whispering under my shoes, trying to make a map of a maze with the lights off. Did Greg send it? She shook her head. He's too arrogant. He would rather be seen than be strategic. Your boss? My boss doesn't know how to turn a PDF into a printout, she said, a humorless half-smile. Besides, who benefits from this? Someone who wants us to burn down what's left, I said. Someone who wants to walk in after and pick through the ashes. The house, she asked, and I understood she thought of money even now. Not everything is about the house, I said, and then I realized sometimes it is. Title transfers. Insurance, the leak in the roof I hadn't had time to fix. The neighbor who'd asked who our contractor was, too friendly, too inquisitive. I pulled out the transcript I had printed, flipping past the obvious sex and invitations and seeing for the first time the metadata from the PI. The IP addresses, the Wi-Fi names, Greg's text at 9:42 p.m., room 1207, same as before, and the line before it from an unknown number, use his name faster. Unknown number, I said, not in your phone. Not in his. Clara rubbed her arms. James, I'm sorry, that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know, if someone set you up, it wasn't me. I don't care, I said and felt the lie thud. I did care. I cared because the world had gone unstable and the only thing worse than losing the person I loved was losing the person I thought I was. I called the PI. Voicemail. I called again, straight to voicemail. A text arrived instead, be careful. They're watching the account. Who's they? Clara asked, reading over my shoulder. The hotel, the guy who sent the photo, Greg and his friends. My voice climbed a register too high. The room felt narrow enough to scrape my shoulders. Thunder cracked somewhere in the distance, the sky remembering its lines from the afternoon rehearsal. Rain began, quiet at first, then insistent. The movers hurried to tarp what remained on the porch while we stood in the doorway of a life being carried away one tape seam at a time. Leave the framed vows, I told the movers. They belong to the house now. A man nodded and set them on the mantel. Clara touched the glass, then turned to me. If someone used your name, she said, what else did they use? We walked to my office. Desk drawers are biographies. Mine told a story of neatness meant to hide panic. Password notebook in a false bottom box. Secondary email accounts. A file labeled house repairs that included contractor bids and insurance quotes. At the bottom, a sticky note I didn't write, call Marlowe. Ask for 1207. It was in my handwriting, but not. The slope was wrong. The pressure points too heavy, as if someone had practiced me. Cliffhanger, the office light flickered. The house went dark, and in the black my phone lit up with a single text from a new number. You should have read the back page of the transcript. We're not done. Look under the cake dome, the cake dome. Where the wedding topper had once lived, a tiny porcelain couple permanently mid-laugh, glued to a moment no one can hold forever. I walked into the living room, phone light a shaky moon, and lifted the glass. The keys were still there. The photograph sat beside them, folded again, a paper animal pretending sleep. Beneath them, a square of thicker stalk I hadn't noticed. I slid it free. The paper had the texture of an invitation. My name was embossed at the top. Not my first name, the full one. The one only legal documents use, the one my mother said when I was in trouble. Below it a date and a time, tonight. 10 o'clock p.m. the Marlowe Hotel, room 1207. A note written in block letters, bring her, come alone. Clara read over my shoulder. This is a trap. Yes, I said, but whose? We should have called the police, we should have called the pie. We should have burned the paper and slept on opposite sides of an empty bed and let the world spin without us. Instead, at 9:35 p.m. we were in the car, rain stitching lines between the windshield wipers' impatient hands. Silence filled the space between us, but not the old silence that had killed us by degrees. This one was new, tense, alive. Why do they want me there? She asked, eyes on the road. Because you complete the picture, I said. Because this is a performance, and we are the audience pretending to be actors. The Marlowe's lobby smelled like citrus and money, the kind of place that pretends storms can't touch it because glass is thicker when it costs more. The clerk looked up with the bland smile of a person who has perfected neutrality. Welcome back, Mr. T, he caught himself. Welcome. Room 1207, I said. I'm sorry, sir, we can't divulge guest information. We have an invitation, I said and slid the card across the counter. He read it, lips moving slightly, then startled at something he didn't let reach his face. Elevators are to your left, he murmured. Good luck. Good luck, Clara whispered as we walked. Maybe they're out of mints, I said, and she almost smiled before remembering the night didn't belong to jokes. The elevator counted floors like a funeral bell. On 12, the hallway was a long hush, carpet swallowing our steps. 1207's door was ajar. Light spilled out in a trapezoid. I knocked once and pushed. Inside, the room was staged like a confession. On the table, a manila folder, 3 photographs spread fan-like, a flash drive, and a hotel pen that had leaked blue onto the runner. In the armchair facing the table sat a man I recognized from a LinkedIn profile I'd scrolled past in a different life. The pie, except not mine, not anymore. James, he said. Clara, he nodded as if we'd all rehearsed. You texted me, I said. He shrugged. Depends which me. Clara's jaw tightened. You set us up. He steepled his fingers. I gave you the chance to tell the truth. You both declined. What do you want? I asked. He tapped the folder. To show you the back page. I opened the folder, the transcript again, but this version had the audit trail attached, the kind of back-end printout lawyers drool over. IP addresses, timestamps, devices, 2 phones, Greg's number. And a second device labeled James T. Backup. The messages from Grace to Greg had been sent from a spoof number routed through a backup device registered to me, using a Wi-Fi network named MARLOWE guest. I don't have a backup phone, I said. You do, the pie replied. It's at the storage unit you just secured today. Secured, Clara turned to me, eyes sharp. One of the keys, I said. I never told you which unit. The pie smiled without warmth. Unit B17, registered to a shell company established 3 months ago. The mailing address is your office. The signature opening the unit matches yours. He slid a photo across the table, me or a version of me at a distance, signing a form, head down, the angle useless, the certainty cruel. This is insane, I said. What's in the unit? Clara asked. The pie placed the flash drive on the table and clicked a small remote. The TV came alive, security footage, a man entering the storage facility at 2:13 a.m., cap low, mask on. Same build as me, same jacket I wore last winter. He opened B17 and pulled out a box. Inside, a phone, a stack of envelopes, a portable printer, and a wedding cake topper with its head snapped off. Clara gasped. Who? The video zoomed closer as the man turned slightly enough to catch his eyes. Familiar, not a mirror, a photograph's cousin. Greg, why use my name? I asked, swallowing a rage that tasted like pennies. Because he needed friction, the pie said. He needed your marriage to crumble publicly enough that Clara felt isolated, ashamed, malleable. People are easier to keep when they think no one else will have them. Clara's voice was small. It wasn't just a mistake. The pie nodded. He courted, then corralled. Love bomb, withdraw, bait. He took your language and wore it. He forged your hand. He paid with your card when you were at the hospital. He learned your tic so well he could text as you without tripping alarms, not because he's a genius. He looked at me, because you're predictable when you're kind. The room swam. Why are you helping us? The pie's gaze drifted to the door as if expecting someone. Because I was hired to do the opposite. Because I don't like the man who hired me. Because sometimes a paycheck tastes like rot. He stood. He'll be here in 5 minutes. The invitation wasn't for you to learn. It was for him to perform. He wants you to break. How do we not? I asked. Don't give him the scene, the pie said, pocketing the remote. Don't let him write the ending. He paused at the threshold, and record everything. He left without a sound. The door clicked closed. I turned to Clara. The rain at the window sounded like applause in the next room. We can leave, I said. She shook her head, tears slick in the low light. I owe the truth something. The handle turned, the door opened. Greg walked in, smile bright and casual, like a man arriving at a surprise party he'd planned for himself. James, he said, spreading his hands. Clara, he tilted his head. I see you got my invitation. Cliffhanger, I hit record on my phone and placed it face down on the table. The camera pointed at a man who wanted to be the author of our ruin. Let's talk, I said, and for the first time since the envelope broke the room, I wanted the talking. Greg made himself at home the way weeds claim a garden fast, smiling, pleased with their ability to thrive where they don't belong. He sat without being asked, legs crossed, ankle bouncing. Before we begin, he said, I just want to say how sorry I am that things had to come to this. His voice was a radio host's, professional sympathy lacquered over a sales pitch. You're sorry you got caught, Clara said, each word a shard she handed back to him. He raised an eyebrow. Caught for what? I slid the flash drive toward him like it was a dessert menu. For forgery, fraud, stalking, identity theft. Pick a flavor. He chuckled. This is adorable. James, you of all people should know that courtrooms love paper, not stories. What do you have? A pie with a conscience and a CCTV angle that could be anyone in a cap. Plus the audit trail linking your messages to the MARLOWE guest network, I said. Plus payments from your card to a retired call center agent specializing in spoofing. Plus a photo of you entering B17. I didn't have that last one, not clearly, but sometimes you build a bridge while you're crossing it. He smiled wider, which meant I was close. You sound angry, he said to me, then turned to Clara. He sounds angry, doesn't he? He never used to raise his voice. I always admired that about him. Stable, predictable. Safe, he leaned in, boring. Talk, I said, tell us why. He widened his eyes, faux innocent. Why what? Why my name, I said. Why the receipts? Why the text that said use his name? Faster, why the storage unit with my handwriting on a sticky note I didn't write? He steepled his fingers, pleased to be asked. Because it's elegant, he said, because I know men like you. You think the world can be managed by preparation. You think details are fences, but fences are just invitations to climb. You built a life that looked like a calendar app and expected no one would find the gaps. Clara's voice was a thread pulled from a sweater. Did you ever love me? Greg didn't hesitate. I loved what you made me feel, he said. Important, chosen, you were a mirror, then your mirror cracked and I cut myself on it, so I made a new one. By breaking mine, I said. He waved a hand as if erasing a chalk line. Collateral, and besides, it's not like you didn't enjoy the role, the noble husband, the martyr. Even now, listen to yourself. You sound like a thesis. I leaned forward, letting the anger steady instead of scatter. Here's what happens, I said. You walk out of this room and you never text, call, email, or look in our direction again. You resign. You return anything you took, including the backup phone and the files you copied from my office. In exchange, we don't go to the police tonight. He laughed, delighted. You think you're holding cards, he tapped the table. I hold the narrative. Clara came to me. She told me things that would make a judge weep. Want to hear one? She said you were cold, that you withdrew affection as punishment. That she begged you to touch her and you said later, always later. He glanced at her. Am I misremembering? Clara flinched, not because it was true, but because once a version of that had been. I told you that in confidence, she said. You told a stranger in a bar that, he corrected. I just happened to be the stranger, and later I watched you practice the same withdrawal on him. We learn what we live. Enough, I said, leave. He stood slowly, savoring the height. No, he said, not until I finish. He pointed at the recorder I had not hidden well enough. You're recording, good, let's put this on the record. Clara, tell him about the night in November. Tell him about the message you almost sent me but sent him by accident. Clara stared at the table, shame rising like heat from asphalt. I texted I miss you to James, she said. When it was meant for you, she swallowed. He was in the next room, Greg. That's what you turned me into. He shrugged. I didn't turn you into anything. I just gave you an exit. I stood. We're done. He stepped closer until I could see the small scar on his chin. The kind that happens when a child learns he isn't invincible and decides to spend the rest of his life proving he is. You're not going to the police, he said. Because to do that, you have to admit how much you didn't see. You have to admit you were a man your wife could cheat on in the same city, in the same hotel, and you still brought her flowers. You have to admit you are not the hero in your own story. Maybe I'm not, I said. Maybe I'm just the man who keeps showing up. The door opened behind him. 2 uniformed officers stepped in. The pie stood between them, badge of some kind in his wallet flipped closed as he met my eyes. Anonymous tip, he said. Multiple counts of identity theft, harassment, and unlawful surveillance. We like to arrive before the ending. Greg's face tilted into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You can't prove. One officer stepped forward. We can talk downstairs. He held out cuffs. Hands, please. Greg looked at Clara, then at me, the mask slipping just enough to reveal the small, mean boy who never learned not to touch the stove. This isn't over, he said as they turned him. It is, Clara said, voice steady. For me. They let him out. The pie lingered. There will be paperwork, he said, almost apologetically. And fallout, he won't go quietly, but he won't be writing tonight's chapter. When the door closed, we both exhaled. The room felt larger by 3 sizes. The city outside remembered how to breathe with us. Clara sat and put her face in her hands, not hiding, just resting. I don't know how to be in this room with you, she said without moving. Then we don't, I said, we start somewhere else. Cliffhanger somewhere else turned out to be the shoreline at midnight, the place where water makes a habit of erasing. She stood ankle deep and asked a question the tide tried very hard to steal from the air before I could answer. Is there a version of this where we don't finish breaking? The sea at night is an honest thing. It tells the truth about gravity and pull, about how even the moon can't help but move toward what it loves. We stood where the water cuffed our ankles and unstitched the sand beneath our feet until we were both half an inch shorter and somehow more ourselves. The sky was a clean, dark page. The city behind us hummed like a machine that had instructed us to keep producing, and we had, and now it could wait. Is there a version of this where we don't finish breaking? Clara asked again, and this time I heard the full weight she'd packed into it. Not a plea to return, not a demand to absolve, but a request to honor the part of the world where we had been good to each other and not let it drown in the place where we weren't. We already broke, I said. What happens next is whether we keep living in the rubble or we build something different. Apart, she said, not a question. Apart, I said, not a punishment, a boundary that didn't sound like a cage. She nodded and cried in the way real crying is, without performance, face messy, breath hitching, hands empty. I didn't touch her. That was part of the new honesty. We didn't take what we hadn't been offered. When she finished, she wiped her cheeks and laughed, a surprised, small sound. I thought the worst thing would be you hating me, she said. But it's this, you not needing to. I needed you for a long time, I said. Then I needed to stop needing you. I watched a wave die around her ankles and reorganize itself into the next attempt. I won't pretend I don't still love you in a way that makes breathing feel complicated. She smiled, grateful and wrecked. You always did use too many words. Occupational hazard, I said, and we both understood we could be kind and final at the same time. Back at the house, morning began to draw a line of pale along the blinds. She packed the last small things, jewelry dish, copper hairpin, the paperback with the bent spine that had lived on the nightstand for 6 months because neither of us could bear to finish it. The movers returned for a second run. The Pi texted that Greg had been booked and processed, that his phone had been seized, that the storage unit had been cleared by warrant. Evidence. Story. Endings. We did the logistics like people who once planned trips and now plan exits. Attorney consults, bank accounts, passwords, forwarding addresses. At the front door, Clara turned and looked at the house as if it had spoken her name. This place held so much, she said. It did, I said. And it always will, she added, surprising us both. Not for me, for what it taught me I don't get to keep if I don't care for it. I didn't forgive her. That word felt too clean for a night that had been anything but. I did something else, released her from being the last sentence of every paragraph in my head. Take the plant, I said, the one we didn't kill. Let that be a promise you keep with yourself. She laughed and cried again and took it. On the step, she hesitated. You told me once that love is a verb, she said. I wish I'd conjugated it better. So do I said, but this is a verb too. I opened the door, she left. The air after her was heavy in the way rooms are after you move furniture and the dust has to decide where to settle. I walked through the house and touched nothing. In the living room, the vase still leaned against the mantel. I picked them up. The glass was cool and my fingers left fog prints that vanished as quickly as they appeared. I promised to choose you even when it's hard. The words shimmered like the horizon at noon. I slid the frame into a box labeled keep and felt something in me agree. At noon, the ocean called again. I drove there because it was where I had remembered how to breathe yesterday and I believed in repetition. A woman walked her dog and a child built a wall against the tide that the tide kept gently undoing. I sat and watched and let the quiet arrive. In that quiet, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that turned out to be the Pi. He'll try from inside, he'll ask for a statement, he'll want to turn you into a character, decline, document, heal. I typed back, thank you, then put the phone away. There is a version of love that is a house. There is a version that is a map. There is a version that is a lighthouse, and you don't live in a lighthouse. You steer by it. I looked at the water and decided that the next person I loved would meet me in daylight with their hands empty and their history told in a voice that didn't ask me to rescue it. And if that person was just the man on the sand learning to name himself without a second mouth to echo it back, then that would be enough for a while. On the way home, I bought a new mug. It didn't match anything we used to own. I made coffee and let it go cold and made it again. The cake dome sat empty on the table, glass catching light like it was practicing how to be a window. I left it empty. Some spaces need to stay unfilled long enough for the room to learn its new shape. That night I slept, not well, not deeply, but without waking to check the door, the phone, the imaginary fires. In the morning, the plant was gone and the indentation of its pot remained, a circle of dust the exact size of a second chance. I wiped it clean. I opened the windows. I let the house breathe me in. The exact size of a second chance. I wiped it clean. I opened the windows. I let the house breathe me in.